My name is Saxon Mullins. In 2013, when I was 18 years old, I was raped in an alleyway in King's Cross.
This story that's emerged of Luke Lazarus. He was convicted last month, sentenced to a maximum jail term of 5 years for sexually assaulting a teenage girl and then bragging about taking her virginity. It had taken place in the early hours of May 12, 2013. It's now emerged that a number of high-profile people provided references for this man. One of those who did provide a reference is the Mayor of Waverley Council, Sally Betts, and she's on the line. Councillor Betts, good morning. How long have you known the Lazarus family for?
Oh, I've known his grandmother for about 30 years. His grandmother is a friend of mine.
Grandmother, how well have you known him?
Look, I've come across him over the years, on and off. I've been very involved in different charities over the years, and he has often supported me, like him and his brothers and his family have supported the various charities I've been involved with.
Yes.
So I've only seen a good side of him. I am still completely shocked that that the kid I know did this.
But I mean, you didn't know him. You knew him in a sort of passing fashion. You obviously know his grandmother much better.
Oh, much better, yes.
So how did it come about then that you were asked to actually write a reference for this man?
His grandmother asked me to.
Now, you say you wrote it in a capacity as a private citizen.
Private citizen,
it wasn't on council letterhead. It wasn't in your position as Mayor of Waverley Council.
No.
You would have referred to your position, though, within that reference.
I did, but it's sort of the context that I wrote it in, apart from supporting the family, is I've been involved with Ways Youth Service for 25 years.
Yes.
And so I've spent 25 years, I suppose, trying to assist young people who perhaps have strayed a little bit out of mainstream.
Yes.
So, there's no doubt that Luke should be punished. Anybody who does something like this should be punished. I suppose what I'm trying to do is find out of this absolute tragedy something good.
Yes.
And therefore, I've been sort of working with Ways, contacted the police to see how we can put programs together to educate young men that no means no in any circumstances. Educate young women how to protect themselves, give them some good tools.
And look, all of that's fair enough, but in this case, most people would be of the view that somebody who's committed an offence like this has to spend some time in prison. You were writing to try and seek a non-custodial sentence for him.
Yeah, I would, because I think that in some cases, some non-custodial sentences can be quite powerful.
I couldn't disagree with you more strongly on that, Sally. I'm sorry, I can't believe that in your situation, with a fleeting knowledge of him and obviously a good knowledge of his grandmother, he was clearly in a position of power here because it was his father's venue. He obviously uses that to big note. I suspect that he figures in some cases that he's lured her behind the venue, telling her they were going to a VIP area, and then has raped her and bragged about taking away her virginity. I struggle to see how you could come up to the conclusion that he shouldn't go to jail.
Look, I think, I absolutely, I am agreeing with you, but if, for example, this kid had to, as part of a program, talk to other young men and say, this is what I did.
Yes.
From when I spoke to him, he does understand what he's done.
Does he? I'm not convinced he does actually accept that, A, what he's done, and B, that it was illegal.
Well, all I can say is when I spoke to him, He was certainly in tears. He was remorseful, and he said, "I've done a terrible thing."
Yes, I think he was in tears for himself, though, Sally. I think he was more concerned about the prospect of going to jail than he was necessarily remorseful about what he's done.
Yeah.
It seems to me that he's come from a very nice background. There's been a certain entitlement mentality there, and I think suddenly the realisation that this had caught up with him, I think that's what prompted the tears and the remorse more so than any concern for the victim, because in the hours afterwards he was texting to his friends and bragging about taking away her virginity.
Disgraceful. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you at all.
But a person like that, even if it's a one-off, they have to go to jail, don't they?
Well, look, I mean, that's why we have judges. So I would never criticise the judge. What the process is that obviously he was convicted, and then the judge takes into consideration different things. In my letter, said I had known him, I'd seen him growing up. The Luke that I knew, and the way that I had seen him, he seemed to be a decent person.
And look, I don't dispute that, but in fairness, equally, Sally, the Luke you've seen is maybe the Luke you've seen at midday on a. You haven't necessarily seen the Luke who maybe hangs around his father's night spot at 11 o'clock on a Friday or Saturday night, possibly leering at women and perhaps acting as if he owns the joint because his father does, and assuming that somehow these women are all his playthings because his father owns the venue. You haven't seen that side of him, have you?
No, absolutely not. Now, if there's some way that I can assist in Luke making amends, I don't know how you make amends to the young woman.
No, that's right. Yes.
But we need to move forward and find a way to protect other young women. This is my focus.
Yes.
I really am working towards getting some programs in place to teach young men they can't do this under any circumstances.
And look, I think that's very important. Those programs are important, but I think also the courts do have a vital role to play in terms of a deterrent in saying, look, I'm sorry, I don't care what sort of privileged upbringing you've had, no matter what sort of a one-off this might have been, this was opportunistic, as the judge described, spontaneous and opportunistic.
Yeah, that's what
the actions
judge said,
of a young man who felt a sense of power and entitlement. I just don't see how you can say to someone, well, look, you don't go to jail for this. They have to go to jail as part of this deterrent program, coupled with hopefully rehabilitation.
Yeah, Stuart, I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you at all.
I know, but,
I mean,
what you wrote to the judge, you wrote to the judge, though, you were requesting a non-custodial sentence.
With a program to make sure he paid an incredible debt that he owes this young woman and the whole of society. I mean, if this kid had to come out in public, face what he's done in public, and stand up and say, I raped a young woman, I did the wrong thing, I think that might be quite powerful. It may stop other kids in similar situations doing that. My whole aim of suggesting a non-custodial sentence is to make Luke stand up and be counted for what he did.
Well, he has to
not get away with it. Absolutely not get away with it.
No, well, look, I think he has to be judged. He can still stand up. He's still got to acknowledge that he actually did it and that what he did was wrong. Look, I appreciate your time this morning.
Yeah, I think if I can say one last thing is, I think the most important thing is that we look at young people generally and put programs in place to educate them not to get into this situation, and then have programs that if you do, like programs that we can support people like this young girl. So it's about prevention. Prevention is the best thing. We need to prevent it by having programs for young boys and young girls.
Oh, well, that'd be the idea. Look, appreciate your time again, and best wishes for Easter.
Thank you, and to you too.
Thanks,
Bye.
Sally. Sally Betts, who's the Mayor of Waverley. I couldn't disagree with her more strongly.